Arrow 1. Members pick things up.
One of the funniest stories about church came with a guy that we helped. He was in need of money. I mean, he was just out of work. And so we always wanted to give dignity and want to give dignity to people that are out of work. So I don't just hand money around. If it's a guy, I'm like, hey, I got a job for you. So I always love to put people to work. It kind of separates the ones who don't want to do anything and are just looking for drug money from the ones who legitimately kind of just, they've fallen on some tough luck and here's the church and we can use them. And so we took this one gentleman and he was a little bit older and we gave him a job of cleaning around the church. Now we had professional cleaners, so sometimes he was just cleaning after professional cleaners. We didn't care. We wanted to give him dignity, and picking up stuff is a big deal at church, whether it's picking up junk off the floor, cleaning a toilet, or picking up the person next to you that you're sitting next to in church because they have a down day. And you just happen to be placed by the Lord right there as a disciple to help that person. So this guy, we give him a job and we're paying him like $15 an hour, to do this. And he starts cleaning bathrooms. And man, this guy was like the master of cleaning bathrooms. I've never even seen him. The people we hired professionally didn't clean as well as this guy. But after a few weeks, a couple of our ushers came to us and they said, hey, we've got to talk to this guy because he's standing now in the bathroom and he's making sure that everybody picks up after themselves. And we thought, well, okay, let's talk to him. But that's pretty amazing because really what it was is he found some dignity in picking stuff up. And so he wanted everybody else around to do the same. If he's going to do it, they need to do it. And so we ministered to him a more excellent way. You got to be easy. A lot of these people are new and you can't, demand that they do that. But he cared enough about the church he was now going to and the things that he was doing to pick things up, to bring that attitude with him. Imagine if all disciples have that attitude, but sometimes on a deeper scale. The person who's struggling, pick them up. The person who comes into church with a bad attitude, instead of being frustrated with them, try to pick them up. It's not easy, but from the parking lot when you see a piece of paper to a person who's going through the worst day of their life, members pick stuff up.
Arrow 2. It's better when you're here.
I took a well-deserved vacation with Lisa, and it was like a 3-week vacation, right? It was awesome. And everyone filled in great. Services were great. We got a great report about how everything went when we were gone. But one person came up to me afterwards and said, you know something? It was better with you here. Everyone did good, but it was better with you here, Pastor. And I was like, man, it really lifted me up. I was like, well, thank you. And then I looked at them and I said, and it's better when you're here. And that thought is true for all of us. When you're a member of a church, you get the mindset. It's better when you're here. You lift up the atmosphere. You make worship better. You make the preacher feel better when you amen. Maybe you're somebody teaching in children's church or whatever you're doing. It's better when you're here. And that's really the spirit of being a member. It's better when I'm here. And if you're ever tempted to think it's not, maybe you're going through one of those, days where you feel negative about yourself, show up to the house of God. It's better when you're here.
Arrow 3. Members have an unwavering commitment to being a disciple.
A young gentleman comes in my office and he shares a pretty amazing story with me. He's a gentleman at our church who's been at our church for a few years, really a great guy. And he ends up taking a job. He leaves kind of a corporate job and takes a job at a ministry, kind of a world-known ministry that has to do with feeding children all over the world. And in fact, I had counseled him, about the subject. I said, man, I think you should take the job, even though it's less money. It's a worthy cause. And so he's working there for a few years, and he's telling me the story that a guy comes into their offices, and the guy's kind of belligerent. He's homeless, but he's a younger man, maybe in his early 30s, so he's strong. And he's kind of a bit of a threat, and he is beginning to harass the receptionists about getting help. And the receptionist just over and over and over is saying, we don't actually place people into homeless shelters. We have some ministries we're aware of that we could send you to, but we don't do that. We don't have money for a hotel room. What we do is feed children. So they know their purpose. They, in fact, have their arrow aimed at the bullseye, and they believe that's what God has called them to do as an organization. So the guy from our church goes out to try to kind of diffuse it and ends up being a good Samaritan and invites the guy to actually come stay with him for a while till he gets his feet back on the ground. As they're driving to his house, the guy is railing on his organization. And he's just talking about how rude the receptionist was, how this organization won't help anybody. Here I am in need and they don't even care. And of course, the guy in my office says, I actually helped you. I'm part of this organization. Our organization does care, but I'm as an individual helping you. It's just that our organization's highest calling, our purpose is not to house those who are homeless. So come stay with me for a while till you get your feet back on the ground. And the guy comes there, he's grateful, and a couple of weeks goes by, he's supposed to be looking for a job, but that sometimes doesn't work out. And so he's eating his food, and while he's at work, the guy's at home watching his TV, eating his food, not really doing anything to get his feet back on the ground. So a couple of weeks later, he has this plan. Hey, I'm going to have him come to the organization because there's some volunteer jobs available. They don't pay, but we always need volunteers. He presents it to the guy. The guy is angry because he doesn't like that organization, doesn't believe in that organization. He's got all these opinions about that organization, and basically says to the guy who's been putting him up for a couple of weeks, feeding him, I'm not going there and I will not help. So that's why he's in my office. And he says, Pastor, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, cut him loose. Yeah, it was just that quick. Just cut him loose. Let him go. You don't need to take care of an adult man. He hasn't been to church, right? And he goes, no, he won't come to church. He won't volunteer. I said, well, then just cut him loose. So you can see the frustration because he has his emotions in his heart invested into this guy. He cared enough to bring him into his house, open up his refrigerator, give him a place to sleep. He's probably grown to like him to some degree. And he said, well, I can't do that, but could the church help in some way? So now he wants to get the burden off of himself, and he doesn't know where else to go. So he's in my office, and he's asking for help. And I said, well, no, the church doesn't really do that as an organization, but I could maybe look around, ask around. There might be some guys around your age that are single, that have a house, that might let the guy come stay. But you've got to answer this question. Would this guy just do the same thing to them? Would you feel comfortable if I found another guy in church to do what you're doing? Would you feel comfortable dumping him off at their door? He goes, well, honestly, no. He probably would do the same. And I said, okay, well then cut him loose. And I told him, Jesus cut people loose, and Jesus brought people in. The people that stayed, he made them disciples. The people he cut loose, what can you do? And I was just trying to relieve him from the pressure and stress because he felt a bit like a failure. And now he wants to put it on the church. So I said, well, the church doesn't really have anything in general, because he was like, well, what about the church? And I said, well, the church doesn't do that. We're not a homeless shelter, for example, but we could maybe help find a homeless shelter, or we could give him a couple dollars to find a hotel for a night or two, but that would only help you dump him off at a hotel. If that's what you need, if we can help you in that way, we'll do that. He goes, oh, why can't the church just do something? And he kind of walks out of the office shaking his head, and I don't see him for a month. He's a faithful guy. He serves at the church. Now he's not there. I see him in a grocery store. It's a true story. You can't make this up. And I said, hey, man, where you been? He goes, I just got frustrated. The church just won't do anything. It doesn't care. It expects me to do everything. And I said, well, you are the church, and you didn't have to do that. And he goes, I know, but something? I'm out. And so here's what I shared with him before we parted company. I said, something, the highest call of a church is to make disciples. That's actually what we're called to do. Kind of like the highest call of the ministry that you work for is to feed children. That's what you do. Now you'll do many other things. You'll organize, you'll call people, you'll counsel people. You'll do a lot of things that it takes to get children fed. And I'll do a lot of things it takes to get people into a position of becoming a disciple. But at the end of the day, churches are all about discipling people. So come on back, man. Remember, really what took place is that guy ended up discipling you instead of you discipling him. You just repeated exactly, without even realizing it, you repeated exactly what he did to you. You just did it to the church. And that is really what discipleship's about. And when people become a member of a church, they're really making a radical commitment. I mean, it's something that grows. It's something nobody ever masters, but they're making a radical commitment to being a disciple, to discipling others, and understanding what the role of a church is. The members will go out and be good Samaritans. They'll love people. They'll care for people. And the church itself, ultimately, its ultimate goal, if it's really hitting the target and not hurting people, its goal, its target, is to disciple people.
Arrow 4. Members never complain.
I'm on the front row of church during worship, and I got my hands lifted. I'm just worshiping God, and out of the corner of my eye, I see an older gentleman, a little bit older than me, and he's walking by me, and he's got this like meter thing in his hand, this DP meters. I don't even know what they are. The people, even before I shared this, Caleb and the guys were telling me what it was. And it's a meter that just reads the volume of sound, music. And he's walking around like he owns the place. He's up in the back, he's in the front, he's walking around. And then afterwards, he comes up to me, he goes, "Hey, the music's too loud." And I was like, "The decibels are way too loud." And I said, "Well, my son's a sound engineer and we work really hard on that. And so thank you." And he goes, "Well, no, it's beyond the amount where it's going to hurt people, it's going to do this." And he just keeps going on, just keeps complaining. So I said to him, "Hey, here's what you do. Write down all your information and email it to the church." I said, "We read everything." And I said, we won't get back to you or anything like that, but we read everything. We honestly do. So thank you. He never shows back up again. Right? And this is a classic thing that sometimes people think they're doing to serve. They think that their complaint is helping us. But the fact of the matter is there's 1,000 positive ways to do the same thing. Like, hey, here is an idea that's sacrificial. Or go to somebody and get to know them and be around long enough and share it with somebody specific. We always say it this way: try not to ever complain if you're a member. Complaining is the number one thing that kills the atmosphere of any organization and any church. But if you have to complain, go to the source, always make it sacrificial, and don't pick a fight, and definitely don't represent a group like you're their congressperson. That doesn't work in a church. Good members realize that they're always part of the answer. Because usually what happens is the complaint doesn't get heard, and most people just end up complaining themselves right out of the church. And boy, we want members that are in, members that want to be disciples. So members always try not to complain.
Arrow 5. Members serve. How often is less important than how consistent.
Okay, this is just total bragging, but my daddy used to say that if it's true, it ain't bragging. So our coffee at V-Life Church is actually the best coffee in the area. I'm not even including churches. If I include churches, it's just beyond. Well, it just happens to be we have a bunch of guys that are baristas. I'm from Seattle, so we care about coffee, and we just committed to having the best coffee in town, and we did it. But one of the things a coffee person knows is consistency is everything. If you go get a great latte somewhere and the next week you go there and it's just terrible, that's not great coffee. Coffee is all about consistency. And really when it comes to membership, serving, every one of us should be part of something around this church. It's more important that it's consistent than even that you're the one doing all the stuff all the time. It doesn't matter how expensive the machine is. You can buy a coffee machine that costs you $30,000, or you can buy a really good one for $5,000. But if the people running it are consistent, they do good quality, they bring it every single time, and week after week after week it's consistent, you've got great coffee. Simply put, you've got great members and a great church when they're consistent.
Arrow 6. Tithing is a God idea. Members make a plan to step out in faith and become a tither.
I gave my life to Jesus at age 19. It was a radical experience. And then in 6 months, I started to tithe. So I had a little part-time job at a place called Paul's Cheesecake. It was a bakery. And back in those days, the economy was terrible. It was during the Jimmy Carter era. So I was happy just to have a job. And then they started laying people off. But I had already committed to tithe. And in the midst of this layoff, even though I was kind of low on the totem pole, they just kept me on. I think it's because I was in the cleanup crew, and you always need somebody to clean up a bakery. Well, it went to the point where there were nothing left but leads and foremans, and eventually just foremans left. The thing went on for about a month. I was still there. And finally, I got called into the office. And the lady that ran the whole place called me in, and she said, hey, thank you. And I'm just expecting, for her to thank me and then, lay me off for a while. And she goes, we're going to be hiring everyone back pretty soon. Nobody knows it yet, so we're excited about that. But we want to give you a raise and make you the head of the sanitation department. That's what they called it. And also, we want to make you the foreman of it. We've been watching you work even when you didn't see us. We've been watching you, and you work even when nobody's looking. And I actually told her, I said, well, there's a scripture that says, work as unto the Lord. That's all I'm doing. She goes, well, great. She wasn't a Christian. Great. So do you want the job? I really believe that in the midst of all of that, when I was tithing, even at that smallest level, not making much money, it set me up to reap the benefit of favor, just like the Bible says. God will cause people to give into your life. As they looked at my life, there was something that they saw, something deeper, I even believe, than my work ethic. And I believe God just moved upon them. We always encourage every member to be a tither because it's not our way of getting money from people. It's our way of getting people blessed so that their finances are in partnership with God. And good members always have a plan. Even if you're not there yet, start making a plan, start budgeting, start praying, start thinking about what it would be to be a tither. And I promise you, not only will it bless this house, but it will bring blessing all the days of your life into your house.
Arrow 7. Members know that morals are there to serve the person.
All churches will have somebody walk into their church like we did years ago when I was a young pastor, where a girl is wearing something inappropriate. It could be a guy, it could be a girl. In this case, it was a girl, and she was not a Christian. She became one. And so her very best clothing, quite frankly, were her party clothes. She brought those to church. She was trying to honor God. And eventually she got to that place where she asked my wife, Lisa, hey, how could I press in more, be more of a disciple, grow more in Christ? And my wife actually said, hey, here's a few things. And hey, would you add this also? And she talked to her a little bit about how she dressed. I was so proud of my church because nobody ever judged her. They allowed her to be there. They didn't trip on her. And I was so proud of my wife because in the exact right moment, she shared something that really helped this person progress and also, quite frankly, helped everyone else. And so the question becomes with moral conduct in church and what do you wear and things about sexuality. It's like, well, do you care? And sometimes the actual real godly answer is, no, we don't care. We don't care. We overlook that. We don't care. And sometimes the real godly answer is, yes, we really care. We care, we don't care. We care, we don't care. And you might go, well, which is it? And the answer is it's always both, because a disciple is walking in maturity and cares again about the mission of a church, which is making disciples. And some people need time to become that. And others are now becoming that and need some discipleship to help them move to the next level. Do we care? Yes. Do we care? Yes. Both are a yes. Make sure as a disciple and as somebody who's a member that you always keep that in your heart, in your mind, in your family, and in your church.